Good morning, folks. How's everyone doing today? We are continuing our discussion, finishing up a few things in Chapter 7. We've done most of the major topics in Chapter 7. The last thing I wanted to show you guys is the book does mention something called Flexbox and Grid, and these are some advanced CSS properties you can use to make some more modern layouts. That's a lot easier than using floats and margin. And instead of talking about it, I'm just going to demonstrate. I've got some links on the page, on the Chapter 7 module, this Flexbox Tower Defense game and this Flexbox Frog game that help you use, I'll just show you. Alright, so here in this, if you've never played a tower defense game before, your goal is to stop anything from getting down a path. So some things are going to come from the top and they're trying to get to the bottom, and the way you stop them is you put up these cannon turrets, but the way you place them, you have to use CSS. So you can see here, Tower Group 1 is a class, and this container here has the class of Tower Group 1. So any rules we place in this, or any properties we add to this class, will change these. And so we want to add rules that will control the location of any elements inside of the Tower Group class. So it says, when you're using Flexbox, first you set display to flex, and remember before we had display inline and display block and display none, so this is another value for the display property. Okay, and then once we do that, you have to use this justify content property to specify where you want or how you want the items organized in your container. And it shows us some options. There's flex start, flex end, center, space between, and space around. So you can try these one at a time, and you're trying to decide which one will be the best layout for this level. Okay, so actually let's try it without doing anything. So you click start. After you decide what you want, you do start wave. The enemies start to appear. Alright, and we don't want them to get to the bottom. Okay, so each of these towers has a proximity, that will trigger it to shoot. And being out here in the middle of nowhere, they're not very useful. So we did not get through there. So let's try adding a property here, justify content. And let's try flex-start. Okay, looks like flex-start is the default, and it says group items at the start. So it just puts everything on the left. Let's try flex end. Okay, that puts them all at the end, still in the middle of nowhere. That's probably not the right one. Let's try center. There we go. That's much closer. And so now I can prevent those from getting through. Okay, some of these have multiple answers. There are 12 levels. All right, and this is a good way to practice understanding the basics of Flexbox. All right, so in this situation, using what we know in this top group, where do we want the tower to go? If we want it to go on the right side, we could use flex end, flex dash end. Okay, and then if we want this one to go in the center, oops, and this last one we want to go to the end, we can set that up like so. And then once you get it set up the way you want using CSS, you can test it out. So sometimes I assign this as an exercise. Right now I'm just showing it to you. If you're bored or you want more practice with CSS, definitely try the levels. They get more challenging, so take a look. Let's look at level 10. And so you can see now these are even more complicated, and you'll have to look at some different values, because we didn't use space between or space around with justify content, and they've introduced another property here called order. All right. Remember that all items have a default order of 0. So you put in a number as the value. I'm sure it explains it. Here are some more things. There's align items, there's flex direction. So you get to try all of the basics. Once you understand these basic parts of Flexbox, you can begin using it to organize a page. And Flexbox is what I used to organize this web app that I built, that I've probably showed you a dozen times. All right, and so it allows you to adjust the positions of the items depending on the resolution of the screen. So as I zoom out, more will fit on there, and it automatically adjusts to the best layout. And I could control it more, but I needed to move on to another project. So anyway, I'm using Flexbox to organize each of these blue containers, and I'm using it to organize the information inside of each container. Okay, so if we look at the style sheet, we can see I have the flex part, created a flex container, and then in each container I set the display to flex, and then I'm using the flex properties, flex direction, flex wrap, justify content, to control how it appears on the page. All right. And I found that it's a lot better for developing a site to be used on mobile and on the computer. It's much easier to control. All right. The other one, and then there's a more basic example that I put in here. I should probably move that one first. I just put the one that I found most interesting first here. The other one is, it's annoying when pages jump around as they load. Okay. Yeah, I should probably have this link first. And then this one, and that one. Okay, so you could watch this. Again, this is additional stuff. All right. The basic part of the course, the basic material in the course is meant to give you kind of a the basics. Those of you who are in the web design degree or the programming degree, you should be finding time to look at these extra things. So this one explains Flexbox with some picture examples. Okay, and this is kind of like a cheat sheet for Flexbox. Apparently you can buy it as a poster. And the last one is an even more basic game. It's almost not a game. is the Flexbox frog game. And it's the same idea. You use the properties to get the frog to jump onto the lily pad. So if this is our container here, the pond, we want to get him to go to the end. We can use the same one we used in the other one, justify content, flex, end. And that gets him on the lily pad. Okay, and then you go to the next one. And you got to get, in this case, both frogs onto the right lily pad. And so we saw this before, justify content, center. Okay, and then it gets more complicated. This one has 24 levels, but it's just a good excuse to use the Flexbox properties. It gives you a reason to try to do something. Where, you know, when I was using it to create something, I didn't have an end goal in mind. I had a basic end goal in mind, where this is very clear what you're trying to do. Okay, so again, these are optional this semester, but I implore you to check it out. But we're ready to move on to Chapter 8. Which is a pretty straightforward chapter about building tables in HTML. Okay. And all I want to focus on here is how do you build a table, what elements are involved, and how do you control how it looks. Okay. So here are the main important, these first three anyway, are required to build a table. So I'm going to set up, make sure I'm actually, I'm going to set up a Replit here, and I'm going to share the link with you. Tables, or I better call it this, HTML tables demo. I do plan to do another live stream tomorrow, just like last week, so we can get through all the material, and you can use the time to finish off the assignments. Okay. So I have a link to an older demo, it looks like. Let's see if it even works. So here are some example, well, I guess I kind of just went nuts with things on this one and used everything all in one table. So you have some working code there you can use to build your tables for the assignments. But I'm going to use this Replit here to demonstrate these ideas. All right. So many tabs open. Okay. So the basic structure of a table starts with a table tag and ends with a closing table tag. Okay. So that sets up the spot where you're going to add your columns and rows. And in when you're designing a table in HTML, you have to follow the structure of you place rows inside your table and you place columns inside of each row. So that looks like this. So we have a table. We decide how many rows we want. So I'm going to add in, and if you're using Replit, you can just, if you want to create the element in here, you can just type the name of it and hit enter, and it will add it for you. So I'm going to, let's just make one with 4 rows. So I can do 1 row, 2 rows, 3, 4. Okay, and this is just nothing so far. So inside of each row, we put our cells. Then those are TD elements. So if we want to do 3 for each one, a lot of this is the same, so you can definitely copy and paste to save yourself some time. You can see how quickly this structure gets complicated. All right. So now we have the structure set up, we can start putting things in the table. So I'll do 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, do, re, mi, and apples, oranges, zebras, and we have a table. Alright, if we want to add a border, we can set table border equals 1. So it's just a quick way to add a border. A better way is to use CSS though. Let's give it a class of my table 1, and we can add in a rule for that class. Remember, when you're doing a class, you use the dot, and then you have to use the name, and we can set border to 1 pixel solid black. Or we can't. I'm not sure if the book actually covers this. Let's see. Borders on a table. Whoops. Gotta be more specific. Looks like you just also have to include the rows and, no, just the rows, looks like. No, I'm sorry. You have to include the columns, so the TDs. So I can set for all things for the class of my table and the class of my table TD. See if that works. TRTD. Let's try what they have. Table TD. Interesting. That's going to change all tables. We want to use the class. Here we go. No. Table. It doesn't work. that should work. Because we're selecting. Oh, it shows us here. So any element with a class of my table with the TR. Maybe I don't need this level in here. What about I never knew that it showed you this. Interesting. Is anyone in the chat? There's at least one person in here. So looking at this, let's see if you guys can help me figure this out. So I need to select the table element and the TD element. To be able to change the table as a whole. Okay, so in this one I'm selecting the table because this is grabbing every element with a class of my table. And we did set this, right? Yeah. Oh, I called it my table 1. Okay, it was a typo on my part. All right, there we go. So how do you interpret this selector? Because it has a comma here, we know it's selecting 2 different elements. The first one is any element with the class of my table. The second one is any TD tags that are inside of an element with my table. And the way you interpret that is this doesn't have a comma between the two, so that this is kind of a path to that element. So this first part is saying find a class of my table, and any TDs that are inside of an element with the class of my table, apply these rules. So that's how we set the border here. Let's try increasing the size. Okay. And if we didn't include the table, it would look like this. Okay. And so you can adjust things how you want. If you want the inner borders to be different or the outer borders, you can separate those out. Okay. And I'm focusing a lot on the CSS here because the actual basic structure of the table, there's not much more to say than, this structure here. If you want more columns, you just add more TDs. If you want more rows, if I want another row, I just copy this structure here, add it to the end, and we got a new row. Let's say I want to add another column to the 4th row, I can just add another TD. This is very simple. It's odd to me that they added an entire chapter for this. So let's talk about the complicated parts. So if I want to separate these out so I can have a different rule for these. So let's set the inner borders on each cell. That's what this first one is doing. The second one is just setting the outer border for the table. Let's make it thicker. It would look like this. Maybe I want it to be red. but you can manipulate it in that way. All right. So there is another, so if you don't want to have to worry about two separate borders, you can also use this property on the table, border collapse. So what does that look like? That does this. I'm going to even out this so it doesn't have this floating cell. Even this out. And you can do it like that. What if I want all of the information in the table to be centered? Well, so for each TD, I can just set text, align. This is from chapter 3. Okay. Get everything centered. And you know what? It's kind of crammed close together, especially down here on the apples, oranges, zebras. How would I change that? What will put space between an element's content and its border? So the pudding element. Let's add some padding here. That didn't work because you have to specify a unit of measurement in this case. There we go. So we can increase the size of the cells by changing padding. Let's go nuts with it. There we go. It's a better looking table, right? Understanding how to control this thing is the only complicated part. And so I like this site for here, I'll go ahead and give you the link to this. It might be helpful. It just puts all the stuff you need to know in one place. This site, though, is about as basic as you can get, so you're not going to find any like best practices information or what the most modern way to use tables is. For that, you just have to search on your own. Tables, HTML best practices. So best practices are a good way to find out the right way to do things, because there's a lot of ways to do things. All right, so this site, I feel like I've been to this site before. So this is from October of 2020, so it's recent. And this is a very long article. So you can look at this. Okay, here's a written important thing. When to use tables. Tables are for tabular data. Would this make sense in a spreadsheet? So a grid of data is good example. So you shouldn't use it to organize a content on the page at all. So don't use tables for layout. In the past, tables were how people built layouts for their web pages, because you can control using the set. If you don't have a border on your table, it just looks like things are floating around. But you only want to put data in there. Now, you saw how complicated it was to build this structure. If I want to add columns, if I want to add rows, I have to really manipulate this. And it's a lot of repetition, and it's hard to keep track of. So, whenever you have a lot of repetition, it's a perfect job for the computer to do. So we can actually just do an HTML table builder app. Probably 1.5 million of these. Okay. So let's say we want a table. I haven't used this one, so I'm trying to figure out. Okay, for columns. Oh, okay, so I probably start up here. So let's go to table, set size. And let's say we want a 15 by 15 table. It looks like you can just select the cells and type in the information. I wonder if you can paste it. So let me grab a spreadsheet with some information. Right. Come down. We want 15 by 15. So I use Excel to keep track of my budget, and part of being a successful adult is being able to manage your money properly. So if that's something you're not doing, you really need to do that. Let's see if it lets me just paste the information in. Yep. Okay. Can you imagine building a 15 by 15 table by coding it manually with this information? It would be a nightmare. All right, anyway, looks like you can set different things like how do you want the text to align? Let's do center. Looks like we might have to select everything. Then we want to set it to columns, text align, center. That centers everything. And then for rows, we can add more rows manually that way. Set the vertical alignment to middle. Okay, I think it was already set to that. And then if we want to put this on a web page, we just go down here. It has built the code for us. If we hit generate, okay, it does the CSS based on what settings we set. And then look at this. Set the first row as table headers. Well, my table doesn't have headers, so how do we turn that off? Table. Columns. Rows. Cells. Okay. Merge, split, color, background color, border color. Oh, you can use a theme. That's nice. Really should have a way to set it up without a header. Oh well, that'll be something for, well, if it doesn't have it in, oh, here it is. First row is a table header. Let's turn that off. Ooh, keep header visible when scrolling the table. Wow. They have to do CSS for that. Ooh, center the table horizontally. So if we want it in the middle of the page, we can do that. This is a large table, so probably don't want other stuff around it. All right, it's built. It's got everything we need. We generate it. Okay, now we have all the code set up the way we want. Let's preview it. Alright, it's a big old table. Copy that code to the clipboard. I'll go ahead and give you this link too. Nobody should be building these tables by hand at this point in human history. If you're ever doing something repetitive, someone has built a way to do it. Have the computer do it, so you only have to tell it what to do. Simple, with a UI. If there isn't one that exists, if you continue on in the programming degree, you will have the skills to build one. I've done that numerous times, and it saves an immense amount of time. Okay. HTML table generator. So really the only reason to learn how to manually build a table in HTML is if you are going to create your own table generator. Alright, I think we copied the code. So let's just throw that new table down here. Did it give me the whole page though? No. And it put the CSS right on there. So I'll have to move that into the head section. So we'll just throw this table down here. Let's see how many lines it's added for us. Whoops. Forgot to paste it before I copied. Okay. So now we're up to 305 lines. Did you want to type all 305 lines? I doubt it. Alright, and we need to come up here, grab the styles. We don't want this just floating in the center of the body. And we'll move that up to the head section. And let's take a look. We'll open it in a new tab. There's our table. Alright. If anyone is in the chat, and let me know what you think of that. Definitely feel free to use this for the assignment, though the tables are pretty small. Alright. There's also another, let's see, there's a few little things we should talk about. They also show you the TH element, that stands for table header. So in your first row, if you want headers, instead of using TD for each cell, you just use TH. Okay, that's simple, right? So let's generate another table that uses a few other things. Okay, so let's set the size to something more reasonable. We'll go 4 by 10. Okay, let's get some different data here. And we'll go 4, here we go. Here's my pay schedule for work. Okay. Because as a teacher, the payments are super complicated. Four by 10. I'll copy that. Put the information in here. So I need to select just one of the cells. It looks like it's wigging out. So let's try clearing the existing table. So clear table. And these web apps, someone just built this, and it's just a free thing, so it probably is going to mess up sometimes. So I'm just going to reload it here. Okay, I got the information in. All right, let's mess around with some of this other stuff. So let's select this column, and we will left align it. We'll keep these other ones center. All right, and let's center the headers. There we go. Let's make sure they're bold. We will set them to a kind of a larger size. so they stand out more. Could give it an underline, maybe not. Let's give the dates italics. Let's, what are we even looking at? We're looking at table headers. So remember on this, we have to turn on first row as a table header. Okay. And, oh, here's a cool option. Make table responsive. So that means it can adjust whatever they built to make it adjustable. So if people are looking at it on a different screen, see, it can do all of this stuff for you. All right, let's change the border. That's going to be over here. Set. Oh no, we don't care about the color. We want, does it have the border size in here? It does not. But we know how to manually change that if we can't find it. Table. Anything about borders? So don't be afraid to just click around on this stuff. You're not going to break anything. That's one problem with that people who may not have a lot of experience with computers don't realize. There's no way to break anything, so just start clicking on things and that'll help you figure out how to use it. Alright, I guess I don't see anything about the border, but we can set the border size ourselves manually in the code if we want. I just don't. It's not that big of a deal now. Let's see if we can add striping in here. Oh, we have the themes. Where were those at? Here we go. We can just use one of these themes. Let's go stripes. Well, we have to set a color first. Let's go with this one. And we know where we can go to change the color, so if you don't see colors you like in here. And then under border, this is fine. All borders. And then stripes will go horizontal. Alright. So it sets all that CSS up for us. You can generate it. Preview it. Isn't that a nice little HTML table? Alright. And I'll tell you, I haven't, this HTML table generator, I've never used this. I just Googled it and found it, you know. I kind of just assumed, because, I mean, I did find one of these in the past, but at the time I just assumed there is a more efficient way to do this. So I thought about maybe I could create it, but that would take a lot of work, so maybe someone else already created it. They did, and you saw there were a lot of these, so if you don't like this one, you can find a different one. Alright, so let's add this table to our page, and I want to see the effects of the responsiveness. Okay, so we can just go down. I guess one problem if you use these, so this is the classes TG and Rix. We want to make sure it has a different class for this table. Looks like they're generating a random name, which is good. So if I use this table, all the rules will only affect this table. Okay, so go to the bottom. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put this table above the other one. So the big one will be at the bottom. So how can I figure out where my tables are? Well, I'll hit Control F. Whoops, be in the text editor, hit Control F, and I'll just put table. So there's the first one, the little one. I want to go to the next one. Here it is. And this is where I'm going to put my new one. Remember, it does give you the CSS right in the middle of the page here. So I already have a style tag, so I'm going to get rid of that and throw this just at the end of the other information. So I'll cut that out, get rid of this. Do not leave open style tags in your code, because it will make the page interpreted as CSS, which will just break everything. Okay, and then I have all that code in there, so let's format the document. Isn't that nice? It does it all for me. Run it. There it is. Okay. Some rule now is, well, I think we had a color on there. Anyway, let's open it in a new tab. So here it is, because I guess we still had it centered. This one is the one I built by hand, because I didn't want to spend any more time writing one manually when I can use a generator. Okay. So to test the responsiveness, I'm going to hit F12 to open the developer tools here, and this little button right here, I can click that and switch to a mobile layout. Okay, and so it has left aligned the table in the responsive layout. Let's see if we look at this on a smaller phone. Okay. It's going to be hard to read that, but how would we fix that? Well, we looked at how to use a media query in the last section. Let's use one of those just for a refresher. So let's go back to chapter 7. And mobile design best practices, we need media queries. Alright, so here, if you want to do it right in the CSS, here's what it looks like. The rule says for all types of media that have a max width of 768 pixels, follow the rules set forth in this CSS block. So I'll just do that at the end of the style section. Put that media query and the rules inside of there. I'll just set table, and I think in chapter 8 it showed us how to, no, it was on the W3 school site. It showed us how to set the width of the table, which was just, I believe, width 100%. Let's see if that changes anything. So I want to make the table, when it's on a smaller screen, go across the entire screen. See if this works. Alright. Well, it did affect our first table here. Okay. I'm not sure why it thinks it's in a container. It should be smaller. Let's take a look at what it thinks the body is. Okay, so in the inspector, I'll just click body. So for some reason, it thinks this is the body. I think it's because this table down here is too large. So let's set its, well, it should be affecting it here. I wonder if the width, yeah. Oh, I already had this for this one. I'll just comment out the larger table. Because I think if we wanted that one to work, we could have just turned on the responsiveness for that. Well, let's look at how it did the responsiveness for that, and we'll just copy it into the other one. Because I saw it in here at the end of, whoops, in the CSS. It's a lot of lines. How many lines are we up to now? 500 almost. Can you imagine writing this by hand? I don't want you to write this by hand. It's a waste of anyone's time. But you do need to look at this and know how to, what each part is doing, so that way you can manipulate it. And you know, that's really for the programming and web design majors. If you're not one of those majors, you can be, try to get that proficient, but unless you know you're going to be working with web design, it's kind of just extra knowledge for you. For the people that are doing programming and web design, you will be working on, most likely you'll be working on web apps, so this will be directly important for you. Okay, so I think all we have to do is actually just add in right here. We want to do TG and what was the other one? What was the class? That was TG. Wait a second. That is the bottom one. Okay. Let's check the rules for Let's get rid of our media query down here. Let's look in here again. Everything of the TG class set. So if I add, let's change this back to 15 by 15. Oops. Okay, just in case it's only going to do it for something like this. And then if we preview, we can see it'll be large. Okay. We'll have to put some values in here for it to. Oops. Nice. You can hit tab to go over. Let's see what that looks like. Just trying to make this a wide table. So let's put these values in here. Oops. I think I might be able to just put it all in like this. Nope. Okay. Okay, so you have to hit tab and then overwrite it. Nope. Okay. I guess I'll have to click on the manually to do this one. Alright, that's wide enough. Let's preview that. Okay, and so in a mobile view, we do not want to make the person have to scroll horizontally at all. That should be a number one. Never should you have horizontal scrolling on a mobile site, and honestly, you shouldn't have it on any site. Okay, so that's wide enough. Let's do compact mode. Oh, that just puts it all in one line. Okay. Okay. It says make it responsive. Turn that off. I wonder. Let's try this table sorting too. I wonder if that allows it live sortable. It does. That is awesome. Wow. So you can allow the table to be sortable on the web page. So if you want that, you can turn that on. Let's do, I'm going to see the first row as a table header and keep it visible. I want to see all these features. Okay, so let's generate this. Alright, and then let's preview. It is still horizontally scrolling, even though the view is So it looks like it's not good enough to do that. So what you would do is you would just have to present the data in a way that's not wide. So if that means you have to put an extra table with the rest of the data, you might do, that's an alternative. Anyway, a lot of times, or you could make the table in its own separate tab. But I really like the fact that you can make this sortable. That is pretty awesome. So look, by default it's showing August 28th first. But if I sort it the other way, I can go in reverse order. So here's August, September, October, November. And this way is August, December, November, October. Yeah, I wonder how it's doing that. Nope, yeah, that's reverse order, right? Except for August. Not sure why that one's there. Okay, anyway, that is that. The other thing you can do is the merging of cells. Okay, so let's go back to a basic table layout. And so I just want the one that was 4 by 10 again. So we'll just set it back to 4 by 10. Okay, so it'll get rid of all that extra data. Here we go, manageable. Let's merge some stuff together. This doesn't really have good information to merge, but we can merge that. And so we could call this 9, 10, 11. I don't remember what is it? 9, 10, 12. Okay. So as a teacher at Lakeland, you can choose to receive your paycheck in 9 months of the year, 10, or 12. If you're really good with money, getting it in 9 months will allow you to earn more money because you get it sooner. Earn more money by investing that money earlier. If you want to be sure that you can pay your bills every month without having to worry about managing your money, it's better to get your paycheck 12 months out of the year, but you get your money slower. So here we have 9, 10, 12 months. We've merged that cell together so that we can see these. And these actually are all the same, so we could merge those together. And I'm not going to do all of them, you can get the idea. Or you get the idea. Alright? So on here, you can do it like that, and then you can see down here, how are they doing that? So we generate, always generate to get the latest code. So okay, so here you have to set a cell to have an attribute of column span, and so here we have this spanning 3 columns, which means if one of the columns below it doesn't have column span, it'll allow 4 cells to go below it. So let's try splitting this into 2. So if we go down, if we want, it's getting complicated to have all these tables together. Anyway, I do want you to know how to do this, so you can check in here. It shows you. You can merge cells. You just have to set the actual cells to span multiple columns. So here's a row with 1 cell, but it has a column span of 2, and that's this up here. So it will cover 2 columns. And then the next row actually has 2 cells, so those go under it. So you can do that column span, there's also row span, and you have to set that in your cell. So you can set row span 2, and so see now this cell is spanning 2 rows, which means we can have 2 rows to the right of it. Alright, not much to say about that. You could just use the generator, but make sure, you know, it's going to ask you what column span and row span are for in the test, so make sure you understand. Okay. And then it's going to ask you to use this striping the table manually. So, let me show you that. On the first table we built, it is a special type of selector. We already talked about pseudo classes, and so this says nth of type even, which means every even row apply a background color of this gray color. So let's go back to our code here, and we'll just look at the simple small table at the top, which I called my table, I believe. Class of my table 1, so we'll go up to the rule for that, which we'll have to, I'm going to search it because there's so much code. So my table, did I delete that code? Or did I just use a table selector? Table. Oh, wow. I put that on the separate style sheet. Right. Okay. Just couldn't find it. So we want to set this to have stripes. And so we put this in the its own rule. Okay, so it's going to do all table rows on the page, but we only want to do the ones inside of the my table 1 class. So I'll put this in front of it. That'll limit it just to those. And then we can see now the even numbered ones are striped. So here's 2 and 4. 1, 3, and 5 are not striped. If we want to do odd, we can do odd there and get the opposite. So very simple use of CSS there to do that. And you can just grab it right off the slide here. Okay. They're showing some structural organizational elements here, T-head, T-body, and T-foot. And the idea here is so you can apply separate rules to the header, body, and foot of a table. Kind of useful if you're applying a lot of similar styles to multiple tables. There may be pages that you create in the future that have multiple tables. So other than that, just make sure you understand, here's the example, here's a table, you can copy this code in to see it, but they've organized the header information into the T-head, then the middle part where the data is, they put in the T-body, and then the foot where they're calculating the total, they put in the T-foot. It's just like having in your HTML document a head section and a body section, and it's just like in the body section, if you have the header element, the main element, and the footer element, just organize your page. It's the same idea. Alright, and that's pretty much it for chapter 8. Do email me if you have questions on that. Alright. We'll be able to look at and hopefully finish chapter 9 tomorrow, and then we have chapter 14 to talk about left, where you get introduced to JavaScript. And those of you who are taking logic right now, this should be your first introduction to using JavaScript to really affect the front page, use it to control the CSS and the elements on a web page, which Web Scripting 1 is entirely focused on doing that. But this is kind of a preview of that. Alright, that's pretty much it. I am going to end the stream here. So you folks have a good day, and I will see you tomorrow.